Hi, I trust this finds you well. Hope you've had a good week. Hope you've had a lovely summer. Rifki and I and our children have just returned from a lovely summer break. And we're back. It's great to be back. Here's another Parsha video for Parshat Bo. And the Parsha opens with the final 3 of the 10 plagues that God visited upon the Egyptians. A story we're all very familiar with. The story of the Exodus, the story of Pesach. These 3 final plagues, locust, darkness, and the death of the firstborn. And I came across an incredible insight when it came to Makat Bechorot, the death of the firstborn. The Torah's description of the warning of the threat God made towards the Egyptians that every firstborn would be affected. From the firstborn of the Pharaoh sitting on the throne to the firstborn of the maidservants sitting behind the millstone. And then the plague actually happens. And the Torah's description is a little bit different. Who was affected? From the firstborn of the Pharaoh sitting on the throne to the firstborn of the captive sitting in the dungeon. And the commentary, known as the Chizkuni, makes a interesting observation. He says, why the change? First, we're talking about the firstborns of the maidservants sitting behind the millstone, and now we're referring to the firstborns of the captive sitting in the dungeon. Why the change? And he gives an astounding answer. He says, when these slaves heard about the impending plague, they celebrated. Why did they celebrate? Because finally, they were going to suffer the same fate as their masters. They were going to be treated equally. That's all they ever wanted. Some dignity, some recognition. And now that they're going to be treated the same way as the Pharaoh, as their taskmasters, they celebrated. And when the Pharaoh, when their taskmasters heard about this celebration at their expense, they threw them into the dungeon. So it's the same group of people. They used to be slave workers behind the millstone, and now they are captives in the dungeon. That is an incredible insight. Their deep-seated need, desire to be recognized, to be respected, to be treated equally, overshadowed self-preservation. We're going to die, but at least we're going to be treated like the Pharaoh, like our masters. That is a fascinating insight into the human psyche. That's all we want as human beings, to feel self-worth, to feel our value, to feel our importance, to be treated with respect, to be treated equally, to have our dignity intact. The greatest gift we can give another person is to compliment them on a job well done, to acknowledge, to say a kind word, to remind them of their importance. A wonderful lesson from this week's Parsha. Shabbat Shalom.